all the way to infinity, right? So Euler found a connection between this function and primes, and he used this function to prove that there are infinitely many primes. So later on, the German mathematician Riemann, which is another great mathematician in history, extend Euler's idea. So he extend this function into a so-called analytic function on the complex plane, except for the point -1. Well, an analytic function means a function that maps complex numbers to complex numbers. So numbers involve square root of -1. These are called imaginary or complex numbers, right? And has derivatives everywhere except at point -1 in the complex plane. Complex plane is, just a normal plane, but we can actually put all these complex numbers one-to-one corresponding to the points on the plane. So that plane is called the complex plane. So this function was later called the Riemann Zeta function because Riemann used this Greek letter zeta to denote this function. So this is zeta of S, right? So in a paper of only 8 pages, published in 1859, Riemann revealed the essential connection between this zeta function and distribution of the primes, and proposed a conjecture that all non-real zeros of this zeta function are on the vertical line x equal to 1/2 in the complex plane, in the plane, say. So this conjecture is called the Riemann hypothesis. And a proof or disproof of this conjecture will help mathematicians to understand much more about the distribution of prime numbers, which is an age-old puzzle. Well, anyway, this Riemann hypothesis is still open, so no one knows whether this is true or not. Okay, although this is a deep, pure math conjecture, but it doesn't stop writers to write stories about this Riemann hypothesis. So this novel, The Humans, by English writer Matt Haig, published in 2013, is about Riemann hypothesis. So the story is about some aliens who discovered that the Riemann hypothesis had been proved by Andrew Martin, who is a math professor at the University of Cambridge. But the aliens believed that the humans had not yet reached the ability to master this powerful math theorem. So they sent one of them to the Earth to replace Professor Martin, to become Professor Martin. Okay. In order to prevent spread of this news in the human world. So the alien who replaced Professor Martin was eager to complete the task, but in his interaction with humans, as a Cambridge math professor, he discovered that humans are not as simple as and primitive as he thought in the beginning. And the novel is easy and funny and rich in philosophy, and it's very much worth reading. It actually has a Chinese translation, and the second picture is the cover of the Chinese translation. The title is 我遇见了人类. Okay, well, this is a story written by myself. So it's called Riemann's Cat. Unfortunately, it's in Chinese. I use a pen name, Beixin. So it's published in 2009 in the magazine Science Fiction King. It's a Chinese magazine. So this is actually my first attempt to write a math science fiction story. The story is about a Chinese mathematician, Xiao Yu, who came to visit a university in the United States to find the correct way to prove Riemann's hypothesis. However, when he was close to the complete proof of this conjecture, a worldwide disaster has begun. So it turns out that the final truth of mathematics depends on the observer, just like what we know in quantum mechanics. So Xiao Yu's proof of Riemann's hypothesis made him such an observer, which would change the quantum states of the mathematical truth. This is, of course, all imaginary, right? And any change in the basic mathematical truth would, eventually change the world and cause disaster. I put this whole story online, so if you want to read it, and if you can read Chinese, you can go to this website, or if you cannot remember, you can just simply search Riemann Mao, and you should find it online. Okay, speaking about this story, it's okay. First, I sent this story to a more popular science fiction magazine in China called Science Fiction World. And the editor liked the story, but thought that, the mathematics in the story is too hard. So he rejected it. So I submitted to this less popular magazine, Science Fiction King. Okay. And it's eventually published, and as a cover story. And I was still, curious myself, how many people would like to read a science fiction story based on like a pure mathematics, right? A hard conjecture. So once I post a link of this story, Riemann's cat, in my Weibo, Weibo, right? That's like a Chinese Twitter. To my surprise, this link was reposted, you can see here, more than 10,000 times. And it was read more than 57,000 times. And many readers comment something like this, well, it's too hard, but I still, I don't understand mathematics, but I still love the story. Something like that, because they thought this is cool, right? Okay, so that solves, some of my curiosity. So there are readers who really like reading math science fiction. Okay, this is a novel by American science fiction writer Leo Stephenson, published in 1999, called Cryptonomica. This is a huge book with more than 900 pages. It's about story of a mathematician during World War II, and story of his grandson who established a company that integrated cryptography, telecommunications, and computer technology many years later. So the story skillfully introduces modular algebra, that's part of Lambda theory, and its role in cryptography. The book is also involves a lot of advanced math topics, including information theory, Gödel's incompleteness theorem, which is a very great theorem, and the Riemann's zeta function I mentioned before. It's said that Cryptolomicon was required reading during early days of PayPal, the company PayPal. Well, it's huge, but it's a very interesting book. I haven't actually read the book, but many people recommend this book to me. Okay, now let me talk about some science fiction works about foundation of mathematics. Foundation of mathematics is actually a research field in mathematics. It's about some basic problems in mathematical logic and philosophy, including what concepts should be the basic concepts of the mathematics, which axioms should be used to describe those basic concepts, which of those axioms are compatible and sufficient to ensure the completeness of a given mathematical system, and what are the limitations of the system and so on. Okay. So an exciting science fiction work, which is a novella, that's like a long story, right? But less than the length of the novel. It's called Division by Zero by Ted Chiang, who is a famous Chinese-American science fiction writer. So this story is about the foundation of mathematics. It tells a story of a mathematician, Riemann, who discovered a formal math system in which one could prove 1 equals to 2 in the system. And there is no contradiction in the proof. An obvious consequence is that, if 1 equals to 2, then all numbers are equal. And this would certainly destroy the whole mathematics that really loved so much, right? So it kind of destroyed this mathematician's belief. And so in extreme disappointment, really attempt suicide. So her husband, a biologist who once also tried to commit suicide, want to help Riemann to get out of this trouble. But then he found that he didn't really understand Riemann at all, just as Riemann didn't understand the inconsistency of mathematics. Okay. Speaking about Ted Chiang, let me introduce this interesting author. So Ted Chiang is a very successful Chinese-American science fiction writer. From 1989 to 2019, in 30 years, he has only published 17 short stories, novellas, and novellas. Yet he had won numerous science fiction awards. In my mind, his novella, The Story of Your Life, is undoubtedly one of the 10 best science fiction novellas ever. The Hollywood movie Arrival, I don't know if some of you watched this movie, was based off this novella and was released in 2016 and was well received. So at the 89th Academy Awards, it won the Academy Award for the Best Sound Editing and received nominations for many categories, including Best Picture, Best Director, and so on. So the first picture is the poster, a poster of this movie. If you haven't watched it, I strongly recommend you to watch it. It's a very interesting movie. The second picture here is Ted Chiang and me chatting at the train station in Helsinki at 1 a.m. in some August night in 2017. Okay. All right, next, I want to introduce two stories by Greg Egan, this Australian science fiction writer I introduced before. The two stories are called Luminous, published in 1995, and Dark Integers in 2007. Dark Integers is a sequel of Luminous. Okay, so both of these two excellent novellas are related to the foundations of mathematics, and the description of using the laws of mathematics to attack enemies, okay, is simply an eye-opener. Okay, so in Luminous, three mathematicians in our world discovered that math theorems or propositions are not necessarily consistent. So some propositions involving very large numbers appeared inconsistent. That is, the proposition could be proved right and wrong at the same time. So they call these propositions defects. Okay. So when using a super laser computer called Luminous to map the boundary composed of those defects, they discovered that at the other end of the boundary, which they call it the far side, there is a whole world that follows a set of mathematical laws different from ours. Okay, Dark Integers told a story 10 years later after these stories of Luminous. So it's about the Cold War between our world and the far side, using the laws of mathematics. So the title of the novella, Dark Integers, refers to some abnormal large numbers similar to the dark matter in cosmology. Okay, next, let's look at a science fiction work about statistics. So the book is called After War, Before the Fall, Before the Fall, During the Fall, written by American science fiction writer Nancy Kress, published in 2012. So this book won 2012 Nebula Award, which is the highest award in American science fiction, for the best novella. It's a novella. It's a story about the only 26 human survivors in a stereo enclosure built by aliens on the barren remains of the future Earth after a mysterious environmental disaster. So in order to have enough people to ensure human beings' survival to reproduce, they used alien techniques to travel back in time to kidnap children from our time. So it's also a story about a statistician in our time who used her mathematical algorithm to discover patterns of these abductions and try to stop them. Okay, let me talk about a little bit about this author, Nancy Kress. So Nancy Kress has a master's degree in English literature and a master's degree in education from Stony Brook, which is the school I'm teaching now. She is well known for her hard science fiction works on genetic engineering, although her major was not science, not mathematics, right? Well, he is still famous for writing hard science fiction works. For doing that, he read a lot of popular scientific magazines to get knowledge of science and mathematics. So he has won the Nebula Award for 5 times and also Hugo Awards for several times. So in 1991, her novella Beggars in Spain swept both Nebula and Hugo Awards in that year. He was living in my city, Rochester, New York, before, and when he was there, he was teaching a science fiction writing class every year. So I was fortunate to be in one of these classes, and so after the class, Nancy Kress was not only my teacher, she also became my friend. The picture in the middle is an article I wrote about this science fiction writing class, which was published in a Chinese magazine, 周末画报. Okay. All right, now let me talk about some science fiction work about antimass and the imaginary mass. Okay. So the mathematics in science fiction does not have to be the mathematics we know. Sometimes interesting stories can be written under apparently absurd mathematical settings. So a short story called The Secret Number, published in the magazine Strange Horizons in 2000 by Igor Tapper, who was a PhD student in physics in Stanford University, is about a math professor who found an integer called blim between 3 and 4, and what it means to our reality. Okay, the concept is absurd. We know there is no integer between 3 and 4, but under this kind of imaginary concept, he really wrote a very interesting story. The story was actually made into a short movie by a team of young filmmakers from Savannah College of Art and Design. And the movie has won the jury award for the best short in Charleston International Film Festival and some other awards. The movie, I think it's just 15 minutes, and it's free online, so you can watch it on this website for free. If you cannot remember, you can just search The Secret Number, and you can probably find the movie here. This is the poster of the movie. Two science fiction writers, Rudy Rocker, which I mentioned before, and Terry Benson, published a similar story called 2 + 2 = 5 in the magazine Interzoom in 2006, and it's reprinted in Rudy Rocker's collection called Mad Professor. So in this story, a mathematics professor and his friend found holes in the list of integers, which is also kind of absurd. So in particular, they found that, eventually they found that 4 doesn't exist. So there is a hole there. So 2 + 2 is 5 because 4 does not exist. Okay, this is the last book I want to talk about. So the title is called Mathematicians in Love by Rudy Rocker. It's published in 2006. So this is one of my favorite science fiction novels. So the novel is based on an entirely imaginary mathematical theory, which pushes the mathematical imagination to the extreme. I think it's a rare treasure of mathematical science fiction. So the story is like this. So in a world slightly different from our own, two math graduate students who were both in love with a girl and who studied with a math professor in a university similar to our UC Berkeley proved a theorem called the Morphic classification theorem, which characterized all dynamic systems from the stock markets to the motion of particles in terms of so-called morphins, which include 5 categories called a cake, a rake, a dish, a fish, and a teapot. So these 2 graduate students, they fought out for the goal by using their theorems to alter the reality, which causes monsters appear in the air. And they fought through parallel worlds and met some strange alien mathematicians until they reached to our world. Okay, the Morphic classification theorem looks absurd, but in fact, it looks very much like a real mathematical theory. Rudy Rocker, who himself is a mathematician, wrote 2,003 pages of notes for the novel and put the PDF file of the notes on his website for free downloading. I also want to introduce this writer, Rudy Rocker. He's also one of my favorite science fiction writers. So Rudy Rocker is one of pioneers of the cyberpunk movement in science fiction. His novel Software won 1982 Philip K. Dick Award, and its sequel Wet World won 88 the same award. Rudy Rocker obtained a PhD in mathematics in 1973 from Rutgers University and did research on set theory and math foundation. He was a math professor at SUNY Geneseo from 1972 to 1978, and a computer science professor at San Jose State University from 1982 to 2004. So although he switched to computer science lately, he kept thinking about mathematics and wrote 5 popular math books. And he has generously put all his short stories and popular math books on his website for free reading. And so this is his website, and or you can also search for Rudy Rocker to get this website. Okay, that's all I want to talk about for today. Thanks everyone for listening.
I think we have a few more minutes to, if anyone has a question, you can ask Professor Zhao. You can either type in the chat or you can just open your mic. I think from the pre-collecting question, some parents are interested in how do you inspire students to read science fiction books and to write in science fiction? Maybe you can answer that first.
Okay. Well, science fiction books are interesting. Of course, there are a lot of science fiction books for young readers, right? Which you can find, and if you want to write science fiction stories or novels, my suggestion is that you need to read a lot. Okay, many science fiction writers, including many famous science fiction writers, start as fans. You know, they love reading science fiction stories, books in when they were young, right? So if you read or not, well, at some point, probably you just want to write your own stories. And then, you know what people have written before, so you don't want to, write something similar to stories people have already written, right? You also need to, basically follow some, how do you say, like, okay.
Excuse me?
When you read a lot, basically you have some ideas how to write. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think The Martian is a good book?
The Martian by Andy
Anywhere.
Ware. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that book.
What about Artemis?
What?
What about Artemis?
Artemis.
It's also by Andy Ware.
Oh, his second book, right?
Yeah.
It's about yeah, I read that book. I like that book, but I love The Martian better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read The Martian around 50 times.
Oh, really? I read only one time.
I have a paperback book.
Oh, okay.
Thanks for
the movie? You have?
I haven't watched the movie yet.
Oh, okay.
Because my brother just took eye surgery. He can't watch anything.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. The movie was also great. I think it's faithfully followed the book. It's interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for telling me that you like the books that I just bought without my mom knowing.
Some other questions? I think there's a question like in the Google form saying that for kids who has not been very good at math, how to inspire them to overcome the fear to be what? I cannot read this. This form is to be confident to learn math. Right? Okay. You should know that while mathematics is actually interesting, and there are a lot of popular math books which I would recommend to read. In particular, I mentioned this story, No-Sided Professor by Martin Gardner. Martin Gardner is a great popular mathematics writer. He has maybe over 10 math books. I would recommend every one of his books if you have fears of mathematics, if you want to read some popular mathematics. All his books are very interesting. And it's not just some simple stuff, and it's kind of easy to read. I think middle school student, high school student should be able to read his books. And there are some actually many deep stuff in his books about mathematics, but they're very easy to read and very interesting. Oh, yeah. Okay, there's a question, is the Secret Number movie on YouTube? I have this link, maybe I can type it in the chat. I'm not sure if it's in YouTube, but there's you can find it for free from this link. Oh, wait, to everyone, right? Okay. So this is a link for this movie. It's very short. It's very much worth watching. It's a very interesting story.
Okay, I guess if there's no more questions, we can just finish the seminar. And thanks for Professor Zhao to give the seminar, and thanks for everyone to attend the seminar today. We'll post the recording in WeChat tomorrow.
Okay,
Thank you.